There we go, we're live. Hi everyone. Very happy to be joined by Jayne tonight. Would you like to tell us a little bit about your book?
Yes, well, it's called More Than Murder because it's always more than murder. It's all about the clues and the characters and what the goings on. So it's about two sisters, Frankie and Julia, who are very, very different to each other. And Frankie returns to the village of Little Clarsden to claim her half of Rose Cottage, which their aunt has left them together. And her sister's not very happy about her coming back because she thought she was going to get the cottage to herself. So they try to get on, but it's not really working. And then Frankie wins a ticket for a murder weekend event. And they decide that what they're going to do is go on this event to try and sort of patch up their friendship, basically. But the problem is that the playful intrigue turns a bit deadly when they stumble across a real corpse. But because it keeps disappearing, nobody believes that it actually was even ever there. So now with a killer on the loose and a body that vanishes without a trace and trust in short supply, Frankie and Julia must put aside their differences and actually try and uncover the truth and the murder before the killer gets them.
And I loved the book.
Thank you very much. That's really nice of you to say that.
We'll start with that. I feel like it's very much in the vein of things like the Thursday Murder Club. Lots of people who like that kind of book are going to come across to yours and really enjoy reading.
Well, that's very kind of you to say that, because that's such a, an honor for you to say that, really, because that's obviously a huge success. And I would be very, very happy if my book gets anywhere near that kind of success. But yeah, I mean, I think it's supposed to be, funny and light and entertaining, but have a heart to it. So at the heart of this story is this fractured relationship between the two sisters because of something that we learn later at the very end of the book that happened between them many years ago. And their aunt Lucy has left them the cottage together, which they have to live in for a year together, in order to try and get them to, from the grave, in order to try and get them to solve this. So I've tried to mix up fun and humor, but with also some comments about what it's like for older people and, what it's like to have friendship, really.
Yeah, I think the winning formula, especially with like a cozy crime, is sort of characters that people are going to know and love.
Yeah.
From the beginning. And you've really got that with the two sisters because they're kind of chalk and cheese.
Yes, very much so. And I mean, it's funny that you say that because it's really odd, isn't it, when you do these sort of things, because they're both a bit of me. I'm a bit of a Gemini. Well, I am a Gemini, so I'm actually very Geminian. So in some ways, some of Frankie's adventures, particularly on the Got Tow Island with the dogs, that's something that I was very good at catching dogs, I have to say, but was something that from my own experience. And then, Julia's slight hesitancy of being maybe not quite so adventurous. Sometimes I'm a bit like that as well. So it's a bit of a mixture and a mixture of other people. Like I think also it's quite influenced by my mum had a very dear friend called Adele, who was her lifelong friend. And they used to go and do these crazy things together, like go off to France. And this is like in the 60s, when women didn't do that sort of thing. And Adele would be described by my mother as a bit of a girl. And that's very much like Frankie, really, I think. And my mum would be more like Julia. So I think everything, the people that you know and yourself and all these things all sort of come together to influence your characters. I think it makes them more believable, actually. And what's even stranger is they start talking to you. They literally do start talking to you. I have this routine in the morning when I go and walk my dogs, and I start thinking about the day and about what I'm going to do. And sometimes literally just sentences come into my head. And there was one from this book, which was, I think it was, this was a matter of some consequence. And I was kind of walking around thinking, like, what's of some consequence? I have no idea what is of some consequence. And then, of course, I realized it's the letter arrived, and that's of some consequence. And I think it's just interesting. The more you kind of get into writing the book, the more the characters do start to talk to you and start to say, well, I wouldn't say it like that. I would do this. And it's very much then, I hope, what I've been able to achieve is to make to make them different to each other, make them different enough so that you think, yes, that's Frankie would do exactly that. Whereas Julia wouldn't do what Frankie's just done, and she wouldn't say it quite in the way that Frankie has. So to try to make them distinguishable from each other.
They're very distinguishable from each other, because Julia's definitely she was a head teacher, wasn't she? She's definitely got that kind of vibe of, I don't know, like a teacher vibe. She's definitely got a teacher vibe.
Yeah, yes. But I think, it's also, I was thinking about this the other day, actually, because I was thinking about teachers that influence, how influential teachers are. And there is a bit in the book where she goes into the library, and she obviously loves books and talks about, as the narrator talks about her kind of love of teaching people and how passing on that love of books is her legacy. And it reminded me, because many, many years ago, when I was only about 14, I think, or 15, I had a fantastic drama teacher called David Hornbrook. And he's really the reason we went into the business, because he really encouraged me. And I was sort of directing the school plays, and they encouraged me to go on and take my A-levels, which I wasn't going to do at first. And then he told me that, you've got to get a degree, because everybody, and this was true at that time, actually, all the people who are directors are all from Oxford or Cambridge, and you're going to be up against them. And, you're going to have to have a degree. So if it hadn't been for him, I don't know whether I would have gone down the TV media route. I mean, I was always interested in writing. I wrote from very, very early age. I was writing like the junior school plays when I was about 8. I was fascinated by all of that. But whether I would have chosen it as a career, I don't know. So I think it's a good question, isn't it? As who really influenced you? Who was your best teacher? Who was your best teacher, actually, Caroline?
Mine? Oh, I don't know. I had a bit of a horrible experience.
Oh dear, it's not very good.
I didn't like high school very much. Probably my college teachers.
Well, was there somebody that really sort of did influence you, did guide you in a way and led you into a certain path?
Yeah, I went to an amazing college, and I kind of had decided my path, but they were very convinced that I could make it.
Well, that's, yeah. Yes.
At the time, which is good.
Yes, I think we all need that, actually. We need a bit of support and encouragement, particularly as younger people, definitely. I'm not sure how much of that they get today, but it is life-changing, I think, at an early age, to have somebody who's like a mentor, really. And I mean, I've mentored quite a few people in my time through TV, and I think it's just fantastic to see them doing really well. It's just very, very rewarding.
It's a special moment, isn't it? I'm a teacher.
Yeah.
That's my day job.
Yeah, it's very rewarding, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a job for everyone, but it's can be very rewarding. And
hard work.
Sometimes. Yeah. We've got a hello from Donna, who's watching. I was going to ask you about Frankie, because there's a bit on the island, and that's a real...
Yes.
Isn't it? The dog sanctuary that you mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, about probably 20 odd years ago now, myself and my friend and her son, my godson, went on holiday to a remote island in the Gulf of Thailand called Koh Tao. And when we were on the beach, there was just lots of stray dogs. It's a very small island, I have to say that first of all. It's only like 15 kilometers. It's not like Koh Samui. It's about 15 kilometers. You can get from one end to the other on a motorbike in about 15 minutes probably. But anyway, we were on the beach, and there were lots of stray dogs, and they used to live in packs on the beach at that time. And then one of these little dogs, little black dog, came up to me and just kept following me everywhere, literally everywhere. And if I walked along the beach, would run through all the packs, which they don't normally do. And if I went into a bar, I would sit outside the bar and everything. And I recently, about 3 months before, I'd lost my dog that I had for a very long time. So I thought this was like a message, basically. So of course, when we came to leave, we couldn't take the dog with us. So we left her with somebody in the Sari Cottage restaurant and gave them some money and said, we'll send you money and we'll look after the dog. Anyway, we went back, and then we realized that Thai people are very lovely people, but they basically say yes to everything, even when they mean no. So once we realised that actually the dog probably wasn't being looked after properly, we decided that we were going to go back 6,000 miles across the world and get her. But I got a job. So Miranda, my friend Miranda, and her son went on their own. And meanwhile, I stayed here and sorted out all the quarantine. But when they got there, they found the dog, which we called Nitnoy, which is Thai for little one, because she was little at that point. They found her, but she was in pretty bad state. So at that point, there was nothing on the island. There was no vet, there was no clinics that could help animals. There was absolutely nothing. So she managed to get some medication from the pharmacy. Then I found her a contact, which she was going to take the dog back to Koh Samui to another animal rescue place to help. Anyway, in the meantime, another dog, who was later called Star, came along, and Jordan got very attached to him. So we took both dogs. They got both dogs over to Koh Samui, to this safe house, let's call it, rescue centre, where they looked after them. And then we decided that we couldn't put Star back to the island, so we ended up bringing 2 dogs back, basically, to England. They went into quarantine for 6 months. And when they came out, they were absolutely mad. We had this crazy idea that we were going to take them to the beach because they were beach dogs and they'd really love it. Well, that's in theory a good idea. But of course, when you let dogs off that have been in a kennel, well, I was there every sort of couple of days training them, thought I was doing rather well until this time. Let them off the beach, it just went completely nuts, you know. Anyway, to cut a long story short, so we just thought, well, we've saved 2 dogs, but actually that's not really, that's not really going to solve the problem. There are about 2,000 dogs on the island, we thought. So we decided that we were going to go back and set up a veterinary clinic. So I went back to the island, and there was then a temporary vet called Beata, who was Polish. And we were literally in the jungle, boiling things in pots, boiling instruments in pots to do operations. And eventually we raised quite a lot of money. We've set up an English charity here. We raised the funds for the dogs and to create a proper clinic. And then gradually we decided we wanted to do a neutering project, which we did with Whisper, the Royal Society of Protection of Animals. And that was incredibly successful. It's now a blueprint for their island neutering programs. And part of it was that we would hand this over to the community, because obviously it's 6,000 miles away. We can't run it from here. So gradually we handed it over. The clinic now, it's called Neustar Thai Animal Rescue Foundation and Got Tau Animal Clinic. So Got Tau Animal Clinic is still running. We still help to fund it. And it's now run by a permanent Thai vet and a Burmese assistant. And it's just fantastic. I mean, we've helped so many dogs over the years. It's a charity. So if people can pay and they bring their dogs in, they pay. Dogs, cats. We have dogs, cats, snakes, monkeys, everything really. But if they can't pay, they don't pay. And every year we run a free rabies campaign, and we run neutering projects and various things. So it's been incredibly successful. I mean, Thai people, I think, have to understand that to them, often they might be killing their prize peacocks, their prize hens, their prize fighting hens, and therefore they will kill the dogs, which is understandable because that might be their living. But for us, obviously, it feels awful. But we've managed to change this culture around now so that if people will bring injured animals to the clinic, they're not trying to chop them up, they're not trying to chop their legs off with machetes and things. And the kind of like, what you call it, would be like, it's not a city council, it's such a small island, but like the council who run the island no longer bring in the shooters. They used to bring the shooters in every couple of years and just shoot as many dogs as they could. But we persuaded them out of that. So, and we've kept rabies off there. And so I think it's probably one of the best things I've ever done.
That's amazing. Leslie said it's wonderful what you've done to help the dogs.
Yeah, it's been brilliant actually, and our vet is just outstanding. It is actually Dr. J who's in the book. That is her name, and she is the most wonderful person, most wonderful vet. Yeah, and we did do the project with the catching the dogs, which we had a guy from India who I brought over who trained us how to catch dogs with big nets. So it was, I think, one of the funny things when we were going across. We were going up this. I was on the back of the Indian guy's motorbike. We had this big net, and we were going up this rather steep hill. And I suddenly thought, I don't think I'm going to be staying on this motorbike much longer. I actually fell off, but I didn't didn't hurt myself. But yeah, we had that when we did the nutrient project. We had like, I don't know, half a dozen vets and quite a lot of volunteers just helping. But it was brilliant. Yeah.
That's amazing. And then it's so good that you kind of immortalized it in the book, because that will make people go look that up.
Yes. Well, it's got Animal Clinic. There's a website for it. So yeah, and Dr. J is still there and still as wonderful as she always was.
So going back to the story.
Oh yes, that old thing.
That book that we were talking about. I loved the bit where they go to the murder mystery party ostensibly to try and help their relationship.
Yeah.
Frankie's one. But I loved, like, because the murder mystery party is in an old, like, house. You've definitely got a lot of their kind of Cluedo-esque golden sort of tropes running through the murder mystery, which I quite enjoyed. I didn't know if that was a deliberate thing.
Well, actually, it wasn't really deliberate. What happened was, well, the house is based on Orchard Lee House in Somerset, which I visited about 30 years ago as a recce for a film we were doing, but we never used it. But the house kind of always stuck in my mind. So when I was thinking about Medfield, I felt, oh, well, that's the house, actually. That is the house, although it doesn't have any secret passages as far as I know. But so the house was kind of Orchard Lee. It's not exactly Orchard Lee, but it's kind of based on Orchard Lee. And then the Cluedo style mysteries, because my mum and I used to go, my mum sadly died a couple of years ago, but we used to go on these trips. And one of these trips was to one of these murder evenings in this pub somewhere. I can't remember where it was now. And it was so awful. The acting, it was just so awful. It was funny. And Mum kept saying to me, oh, you should write that as a story. You should write it as a story. It'd be really, really funny. I kept, yeah, I'll do it. I'm sure I'll do it, whatever. But of course, I didn't really get around to it for many years later. But I think that combined with, I was a theatre director originally, and I really like actors. I love working with actors. And also there was a lot of hammy. There used to be a series by Michael Green called The Art of Course Acting, which is like, imagine the worst amateur actors you can have. And it was plays about these amateur people doing societies, doing these shows. Now, look, some amateur actors are very, very good, actually, because I have worked with some who are really good. But my thought was, I can combine these two things together so that when they go away, it's a murder evening, but the guy's so tight that he doesn't employ real actors. He employs the local Amdram society. And within those people, they all have their own particular characters. The one who never gets the main part, that one. And the one who thinks he's much better than he is. And, and I just thought that would be really funny. And of course, we don't know, as Frankie and Julia don't know who's acting and who's not. So part of it is they've got these two stories going on. One, they've got this murder mystery that they have to work out the clues of the thing they've been invited to. And the other is who really did kill the body, the person that they found in the secret passage. So it's trying to link those two things together. And eventually they come together. And I think it's just a bit of fun, really.
It is gloriously good fun. And it does allow for some quite amusing incidents, doesn't it? Like
yes.
Where they go to the local pub and
yes. I mean, you shouldn't laugh at your own jokes, really. It's not very, but I mean, some of it I still laugh at now. I mean, I'm writing the next book at the moment, and there's just a very funny scene with Frankie. It's just, I won't tell you what it is because obviously it's going to be in the next book. But they were standing in this area, and I just thought, oh, I wonder what Frankie would do. And suddenly she said, suddenly I knew what she was going to do, and it was so funny I couldn't stop laughing. You hardly write it. But the scene with the scene in the early part with the Nordic walking, that again, it's not something exactly happened to me, but I did do some Nordic walking with a friend of mine, and I did find it very funny when they were trying to teach us how to do it. And you think it's easy, like when you walk is your left hand and your right foot, and you'd think, oh, that's really, really easy. Any idiot can do that. That's not the case, I tell you. So that was kind of came into the book as well, because I just thought that would be quite funny. And you've got the Patsy woman who's only been to one holiday in Finland and suddenly thinks she knows how to teach people. But yeah, I shouldn't laugh at my own jokes. It's a bit, yes. But anyway, Yes, I'm glad you enjoyed it and found it funny.
I guess if you're laughing at your own jokes, though, that means that you're probably putting a good amount of humour into the book.
Yeah, hopefully, yes. I mean, I suppose it's, the character of Mrs. Robinson, for example, I just love her, like, her one-liners. She gets very confused quite easily, and it's always like, "Oh, I've got a headache. I've got to sit down." I just find things like that I find that very funny, you know? Maybe other people don't, I don't know, but I find it funny.
The lady who attended with the dogs um, in the murder mystery, she's one of the couples who goes, really got me because I almost had Lady Penelope in my head.
Oh, that is Mrs. Robinson.
Yeah, she's
Roberts.
brilliant.
Smythe, I can't remember. Is it Robertson? I should know my own characters, but yes, she's one of the two poodles.
Yes.
Yeah, and then it's got the guy who's her handmaid, really, isn't he? Sort of, who then drinks champagne with his boyfriend in the jacuzzi when she's not there. Yes, well, that's not based on anybody. I have to say that anybody in particular.
I was hoping you were going to give us a really good story about someone you'd known in the past who.
Oh no, it's not. That was completely made up. All of that was completely made up. Sorry to disappoint.
The old the guy who's like an old military man as well that they work out pretty quickly. I quite like him.
Do you like him? He's I think he's quite a sweet character in a way. You can kind of see him kind of pottering around his garden with and selling his antiques at the wrong price and things like that. And he's the major. I think he tries very hard, but he's not very good at acting. He thinks he is, but he isn't very good.
Oh, none of them are very good at acting, though, are they?
No, that's why you don't know who's an actor and who isn't. That's a sort of. I hope that there are quite a lot of characters in this first book, and I hope I've been able to kind of negotiate people so that they know where they are. They don't lose track of who's who, because it is quite a lot of people to keep a handle on. But I hope I managed to do that, because I kind of like having these little, subplots going on, the sort of affair and these other things, because they all sort of, you just wonder, well, is that something to do with it, or is that nothing to do with it? What's this to do with? Is he trying to bump somebody off because he wants to actually have the next part, or is he nothing to do with it at all? And what's this American guy? And the woman who is trying to write the book.
And there's some zingers in there. There's one about if she could meet Jane Austen.
Yes. Well, she's American. So, yes, her husband's very rich, so she thinks that she can set up a meeting with Jane Austen and they'll have such fun times together, chatting about writing. That actually, do you know what? I tell you, actually, that is partly true. I can't remember what show it was, because I did go to Los Angeles for a short time, and I can't remember quite where this story originates from, but anyway, there was this American exec, and after the success of not Downton, was it Downton or Pride and Prejudice? I think it was. So the story goes, he says to his assistant, "Just get me Jane Austen's agent on the phone right now." So it was that, I think, that sort of stuck in my mind as being ridiculous. So I thought that if I had an American character, that they could do that. And she doesn't, when he tries to help her out in the when she's trying to write and the husband's trying to help her out, and then she sort of dismisses him, and then later on writes exactly what he said about the cars, because she's not very bright, is Sarah, but she's sweet, but not very clever.
She's sweet. She's not very good at historical accuracy.
It doesn't matter about historical accuracy. Don't worry about that. It's irrelevant that she's been dead for a few hundred years. It doesn't really matter. Yeah. Well, I each their own.
Did you say you were writing book 2?
Yes, I'm quite well on with book 2. I'm just getting it tweaking some other bits, and then it's got to go to the copy editors and the proofreader, and then it's going to be ready, I think. Well, because I work with Hannah Hargraves, who's really, really good, and she's doing the next publishing the next book for me as well. And I think we're trying to get it out earlier than we get it out for review copies, which you'll obviously get one, as soon as we can, really, because it's coming out in the spring next year. So we're thinking we'll have it ready sort of November at the latest, possibly a little bit before, to give people plenty of time. Because what I'm finding, that we've had some lovely reviews, really lovely reviews, but it would have been nice if we had some reviews that we could have put inside the cover and, use them I mean, I could get the thing reprinted again, but that's a whole nother palaver. But so I think we might try and get it out a bit. And it's set in Cornwall, in Porthscatho in Cornwall, which is a tiny, tiny fishing village that I go to now almost every year because I absolutely love it. And it's just, you can just park your car and walk everywhere. It's tiny. It's got one pub, one cafe, but it's got a couple of little coffee shops and lovely walks along the coast. It's quite near the Hidden Hut, which is great, which is a little sort of literally a shack overlooking the beach that does the most amazing food. So I knew it very well. And when I was thinking about the next book, I don't know how these things happen, actually. But anyway, I was quite interested in smugglers. So I was reading about this smuggler called Jeremiah Job, who was around 1800s. And he was called the smuggler's banker because he used to hold all the money for all the big guys who were smuggling everything over. Anyway, I got very interested in him, and I was thinking about smugglers, and I was in Porthscatho, and I was thinking about it, and I thought, oh, that would be fun, wouldn't it? Let's have them in Porthscatho. Let's have the women in Porthscatho, and let's have something to do with smugglers. I've got no idea what, but there'll be something to do with smugglers. So that's exactly what I've written. So that's the kind of they go to visit a friend, and they're Julia isn't swimming out, but Frankie's swimming out. There's the little floating platform in Porthscatho where the swimmers usually go up to swim on there, and they stand and they jump off. So they're Frankie's swimming around, and suddenly this body pops up from underneath the floating platform, rises to the surface, and the police believe that it's just an accident, but the sisters have other ideas, and of course they're right. So it's about how they track down what happened to this guy, and it does involve smugglers. There are smugglers in it. So I've got everything else. Sea, sand, and smugglers.
Does it also involve famous five references? Because I feel like Cornwall and Smugglers needs at least one famous five reference.
Yes, probably. What would you suggest?
Oh, I don't know, but it just they feel like they go together.
Yeah.
The famous five are all like Cornwall and smuggling and.
Yes, I was thinking about giving them a dog at some point, but then I thought, I don't know, because I love dogs. Well, obviously I'm a mad dog person. No one else would go 6,000 miles across the world and set up a clinic. So I'm a bit mad about dogs. But I was thinking of giving the sisters a dog. Do you think that would be a good idea? Do you think people would like them to have a dog?
They would like them to have a dog. Your problem then, we've had other authors on here who've given their kind of main character as a dog, is that you do have to make sure the dog is looked after.
Yes. Well,
people will write to you and be like, you can't just leave the dog. You've written this crime thing and they've gone off.
Yeah.
What happened to the dog? Who fed it?
I think the problem might also be that they might upstage the sisters, because I love dogs so much. I might end up putting them in a bit too much. So I might just leave it to my two little lovely cockapoos who spend so much time in my office with me all the time. They're here. They've been banned this evening. Normally they're here with me, and it's great. They're great company, but they're terrible spellers. They're terrible at spelling. Terrible.
Do you feel like this could be quite a long series? I feel like it could.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm thinking that it just kind of feels like it could, but I can't tell you at the moment what the other stories would be, because I don't know. They tend to just come to me for some bizarre reason. I have got an idea, actually, though, for a Christmas story next year, which will be quite interesting to write, I think, because the sisters in this book, as you know, they don't really resolve their conflict. And in the second book, they don't really resolve their conflict. But I think it might be really nice for them to resolve their conflict in a Christmas story. Because of the spirit of Christmas and stuff, it would be nice for them to do that. Doesn't mean to say they're going to stop bickering, because they're never going to stop bickering, because that's just how they are. You know, it doesn't mean they don't like each other. It's just that they bicker a lot. But that's, you know, that's how sort of brothers and sisters are, isn't it? Can be, you know. I love my brothers to bits, but we can have a bit of a sort of bicker at each other about things. You don't take it personally.
No, it's like a sibling thing, isn't it, I guess?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my brother was the person. Have you seen that? Well, can I show you the cover of the book? Isn't it beautiful? That was designed by my kid brother.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, fantastic, isn't it? He's brilliant. He's very, very clever guy, and very kind as well. So yeah, so I was struggling to. Well, it's very funny because we went back and forth on the, you know, the title. Because every title you think about, somebody's already got it. And I know there are a couple of other books called More Than Murder. Anyway, one time he would be back and forth, chucking all his ideas around. Then he phoned and said, Jayne, I've got it. More Than Murder. I said, that's it, Lewis, that's it. Let's do it. Let's call it that. So then we were talking about the style of the book, that we wanted something that would be very clearly a brand. So that if you see the next book in the series, you'll know, you might not remember the name of the writer, but you'll know, oh yeah, that looks the same as this book. So we were trying to throw around some ideas about that. And I just had this idea of a jigsaw came into my head. So I said, Lewis, what about something with a jigsaw? He said, yeah, okay, I'll think about that. I'll have a think about that. And then he came back with this brilliant idea of the blood from the poison bottle pouring into a missing piece of the jigsaw. I thought it was really clever. That was his idea. Brilliant. So yeah, so I've got him now promising to do the next one as well, and the next one. So not that he hasn't got enough to do himself, but anyway, he'll help. He always does.
Are these your first kind of foray into writing fiction? I know you've written before, like plays and things. You're saying, were these your first kind of?
Yeah, I mean, in a novel form, yes. I mean, the thing is that as a producer and as a director, you're dealing with scripts all the time. You know, you're reading scripts, you're developing scripts, you're talking with writers. I think that whole experience is invaluable, because it's, you know, if you think about, say, the structure of a novel or of a TV episode, they basically all follow the same sort of rules, even if they're not in the same order. So like in a TV, we would talk about a 3-act structure or a 5-act structure. 5 acts is just where you've got a little trailer at the beginning, a little thing at the end, a hook. It's not really any different to 3 acts. So, you know, in the first act, you set everything up. In the middle act, which is the longest act, which is twice as long as any of the other acts, the whole thing unravels. In the middle of that, something happens that turns the narrative in another direction. And then the last act is resolution. So they all follow those sort of, that structure, basically. So you'd think, this is what I'm going to say now, you'd think that understanding all of this, which I have been doing for many years, like 30 odd years in the business, it'd be very easy to write your first novel, wouldn't you? No, it's not. I think it's like, if you, I would sort of say, like, if you know the principles of driving a car, it doesn't mean you can cross the line of the Dakar Rally. That's what I would say about that. So it's, you know, in TV, my TV teams, they're about 70 people working with me. So if I get a problem, to use the car analogy, they'll help fix it. And if the car breaks down, they'll push it over the line if necessary. Whereas when you're writing a novel, you know, you're on your own. And I think that's, I would say, you sit on your own and wait for blood to come out of your forehead. That's what would be my sort of tone of that. And I think that what I do take from my experiences in film and television, though, is this understanding of structure. Also the notion that if you're creating a location, it's got to evoke an atmosphere. You know, it's no good just describing it. It's not about describing it. That's an estate agent. You know, actually what you've got to do is really evoke the atmosphere of that place, even if you don't say anything about what it actually looks like. And then you've got to have characters, which we spoke a little bit before, which are not interchangeable. So, you know, characters' behavior is like that, because it's grounded in their lives and their memories and their dreams and their desires. And everybody has a different approach to life. So your characters need to be very different to each other. And if you're doing a TV, that's easier because A, you've got an actor who's being a character, and B, you've got all the stuff that goes with that. You've got all the makeup, costume, all that stuff, props that you can give them. Whereas if you're writing a novel, literally, it's only you. I think the other thing that really helped me from TV is obviously we work to quite specific and tight schedules, because otherwise you've never, because you've got to, it's going out. Like you're doing Silent Witness, that goes out in January. Well, you'll spend the whole year before that making the programs. And, you'll start with episode 1, obviously. But as you're doing episode 1, you'll be also doing the scripts, for working with the script team for the scripts for all the other episodes, all the other 9 episodes. And at the same time that you're shooting episode 1, you'll be getting ready to shoot the second episode. When you finished episode 1, you'll be going to post-production for that episode and shooting episode 2. So it's a complex, and you can't drop a couple of days or a week because you'll never finish the schedule. So I think when I write, I very much create a schedule. So I very much think like, okay, if I want to deliver this to Hannah for the reviewers, so reviewers for magazines are 4 months before. So like if we were delivering, say this, murder, More Than Murder, then it had to be out to reviewers by January at the latest, because it'd take them 4 months to read it. So that, if you take that back, December is really, half of December is completely dead. So you've got to have your proofread and your copy edit, which is each going to take probably about, well, because you have to allow time for it to sort of brew, probably about a month. So they're already in November. So you've got to say, well, I've got to, and then you're going to want to do rewrites. Okay, my rewrites are going to be in October before I do the rewrites from the proofreader and the copy editor. So that's already taken you back to like September. Okay, and I've got to actually write the thing. So just writing is going to take me 3 months. So you're sort of July already, and it's going to take 2 months to plan it. So, you're around May, you're around now to get something ready for the following. I always think of it as about, 12 months from beginning to end, because also when you start to, when you get your art, review copies printed, there might be some issues. There might be, like when we were doing these copies now, we had a bit of a challenge with the color of the cover, but the printers managed to sort it out. Or, you might decide, oh, I'm a bit terrible for doing this. They send you a draft, they're ready to print it, and you go, oh, I just think I could write that bit a bit better. It drives them nuts. But I promise I'm not going to do it on this one. So I got to the, because every time you read it, you see something different. You see this little thing that you think, and probably it doesn't make that much difference, but to you, it makes a lot of difference. I mean, I think I read this book 100 times, and I'm not exaggerating. I think I've probably read it 100 times, and I probably changed it about 20 times. Which, because it's, you see, when you do it when you do it in post-production in TV, you will do quite a lot of edits. And part of my job as a producer is to go and look at what we call the director's cut, and then say, yes, but, yes, but actually, if you took this here and put that there, and if you change this around a bit, and I don't think the story is very clear here, and I think you need an extra bit of added dialogue here, which you need to go and record, and then let's have a look at it again. So I'm kind of used to fiddling with things. So I have to try and retrain myself not to do that, I think. But it's really important to me, though, that a book has been properly copy edited and has been properly proofread. Inevitably, I mean, I read, a lot of books, like I'm sure everybody listening does, and I can find the odd mistake. Well, that's fine. That just happens. We're only humans, and I hope it will be only humans who hope to continue to write, and not just AI. But so it's really important to me that I've done the best I possibly can. I've got it out there in the best way I possibly can, that I feel proud of it, and that there aren't lots of mistakes. Please don't tell me there's lots of mistakes. There aren't lots of mistakes in it.
The other thing I was curious about, I'm really interested in what you said about the location, because I think you've nailed that perfectly, like the atmosphere and the home they go to and things. is when I've spoken to people who've worked in TV stuff before, they've quite enjoyed the freedom and fiction of creating things that would be hard to film. So I'm thinking you've got a scene that's like in a like a secret passageway, and I would imagine if you were like trying to film that in something, that would probably be quite tricky.
It'd be quite easy, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, part of my job as a producer normally is saying no to people. So, no, you can't have this. No, you can't have that. No, you have to cut this out. I mean, when the Silent Witness was a good example where in the King's Cross episodes, the writer Ed Whitmore, who's a very well-known TV writer, I read the script and I just went like, what? King's Cross? Are you joking me? King's Cross? You must be mad. But we had a very good location manager who said, don't panic, I think I've got an answer. So I said, okay, you can have King's Cross then, but you can only have, half a day exteriors and the rest of it we're going to do like this. And then he said, right, I would like to have 12 dead bodies. I was going like, you can't have 12 bodies because they're all made. These are made specifications, whatever happened to them. And they're very, very expensive. So I had to negotiate, going like, no, you can't have 12. He said, okay, 10. No, you can't have 10. Okay. No, okay, 7. Right, that's it. So I'm very aware when I'm writing something. And I think, murder, this one, More Than Murder, wouldn't be actually that expensive to film because yes, you've got the secret passage, but that's just a set. You could probably do quite a lot of this on location. You've got quite a lot of characters, which could be expensive if you wanted, if you were using sort of high level actors, it could be quite expensive, but it doesn't have to be. Could be the sort of level of Beyond Paradise, which I think is a really lovely show. So yeah, I mean, does sometimes give you the freedom. I haven't exercised that yet, but I might well do that in the Christmas one, where I'm bound to have a whole complete covered, snow-covered little Clarsden, which you'd never be able to do unless you had a Netflix budget, because snow machines are very, very expensive. And it's a nightmare to film with them. So yes, I might do that actually. Give me some ideas now. Do what you like. Yes, don't have to worry about how much it costs.
It's just I was just sorry. I don't speak to many people who've had a lot of TV experience, and the last person I did was like, I've just done all this and I blew this up and I did this because I could just do it in my book. And I was like, I wondered if that was applied to everyone.
Well, I think it's different if you're looking to, you see, the problem is that there's such a big difference between budgets. So between what you would do, what budget you have to spend for a Silent Witness episode to what budget you have to spend for a Netflix episode can literally be millions of pounds apart. And a Disney episode or an Amazon episode, but I think interestingly, Netflix are starting to spend a lot less money on production because they've suddenly realized that maybe when they spend these multi-million pound projects that really fall flat, why are they doing that? Why are they doing that? I'd be asking a few questions when I was their shareholders, which is why you're seeing the trend of them actually not making that kind of big projects so much now. When they do, they're making with very big stars. But if you look at a project like a TV show like Beyond Paradise, they'd have a very limited budget. And they do, I mean, I love that show, actually. They do really, really well with not a huge amount of money. And if you don't know, if you're not in the business, you probably don't notice. I mean, I notice because I'll go, oh, yeah, you've only got 2 actors in the background of that. Or, oh, yeah, I can see you've done lots of scenes in this particular location because actually you want to shoot there for 4 or 5 days. But I don't think most people notice. I mean, I can't
do this.
No, what I like actually is that every time I watch TV, I can't but help think, that's an interesting director, or that's very well written, or I like that set or that costume. Whereas when I read a book, and I read lots of books, I don't have any of that, and it's really nice. So I can just really enjoy it. I don't have to think. Well, I'm trying to stop myself. I'm reading a lot and starting to think like, oh yes, that's very interesting the way they've done it. I'm trying to say, no, just read it. This is time out. Just read the book. I don't know if you've read Everyone on This Train is a Suspect. Have you, Benjamin Stevenson? It's very funny. It's very funny. I mean, it's about this train that's like a bit like Murder on the Orient Express. It's a train, but it's in Australia. So it goes from one A to B, but it doesn't stop. And everybody on the train is a writer, because it's a writers' conference or a fan of those writers. And inevitably somebody gets murdered. But he has the most wonderful style in that he uses he's the narrator, and the narrator is a kind of an author who just happened to have one successful novel by chance. So he's a bit looked down on by the other people. But as he's writing, he's explaining how you write a murder mystery. So saying, now by this point, now that character who's just left, now that might be suspicious normally in a murder mystery, but because they've just left, you should really keep an eye on them later on because they may be returning. It's hysterical. You'd love it. It's really funny. Really, really funny book.
Is Little Clarsden a real place?
No. Not at all. It's not even based on a real place.
Really, it's completely made up.
It's completely made up, totally made up, and these characters seem to keep appearing, like the postman. Postman Pat appeared from there. I don't know where he came from, or Patsy. But do you know what's so strange? I can actually completely see it in my mind. I know exactly where Rose Cottage is and where the other places are, and I think what you saw. Well, what you would have got a hint of at the end of this book is that Julia is going to write her blog, basically. That's how she's going to get her writing sorted out. And in the next book, the people from Little Clarsden, when they get stuck on certain clues, if they think somebody's got a particular, penchant for something, like Harry, the antiques guy, then they involve them in helping them solve the mystery. So what will be happening is that the other characters, although they won't be physically in the places that they are, they'll be on tap. So like Gladys, I love Gladys, actually. She's so funny. Gladys, a passion for marrows. they will be involved as part of her blog. So they'll send out a message on the blog, does anybody know anything about X? We need to find out something. And then somebody from the village will help them. So all those characters will become a bit more involved. And then as we get to the Christmas book next year, they will be all in the Christmas book with all their secrets. So, which will also be tied to the murder in some way, yet to be decided.
This is very exciting news.
Well, you can hopefully have, I've got to write the Christmas one yet, mind you, but I'm hoping to start that. I'm hoping that I will get this one sort of maybe proofread in a couple, probably in a couple of months, and I will start the next one. I'll start the Christmas one. So I think it could be it's always a bit of a challenge when you start writing, I find, because I've kind of got the idea. What I do actually, it might be mad, but this is again something I've got from my film time, is when, I don't think all producers do this. I think it's just something that I do because I started off as a producer, I've done 3 feature films. And with feature films, what I tend to have is up on my wall in my office, I'll have every day of the week, every day filming day. And then I'll have what we call the strip, which is, a scene that's going to be filmed that day. And on each day, you might have like 6 or 7 strips. And then you have the whole board. So the whole thing is filled with every day, what's being filmed every day. Because sometimes what happens is, it starts to rain and you can't film it. So then I would take it from the board, and with the first assistant director, we'd go, okay, well, we swap these around. You just swap them around on the board. So when I went to TV first, when I went to like Silent Witness, I said, I have this thing that I have to do because I like to see it. I'm very visual. I like to see things rather than necessarily have them like in my, in my computer or whatever. I said, so would somebody kindly put up, draw this big thing on my board, because it's a month by month. Each episode takes just over a month to film. So somebody mind putting up a big thing on my wall, which is every day, and then cutting out all the strips and sticking them in the right day. They thought I was mad. But then often people would come in and look at my board, you see, because they'd be saying, oh, yes, we need to move this. So when you can see it in front of you, it's much easier. So what I do with my novels is, if I have an idea, I either put it in my, record it in my phone, or I write it on a scrap of paper or whatever, but then I would put it onto an index card, which I cut up, and I stick it on my notice board. And I may have no idea where that's going to go. It could be a line, somebody says something funny. It could be a whole scene idea. Well, wouldn't it be great if the sisters did this, that, and the other? It could be a word. It could be anything. I've got no idea how they're going to go together. And somehow, and don't ask me how, Caroline, because I don't know, somehow it gradually sort of starts to form, and you start to move those things around on the board until they make some kind of semblance of sense. And then I start writing. And I don't really know. I don't plot everything like 100%. I might just know, right, Act 1 is going to, by the end of Act 1, we need to be here, because that's going to be what is called the inciting incident. But I think that's a bit rubbish, because my inciting incidents always happen early on, like a letter arrives, and then that's what kicks off the story. So, but it gradually, and then it sort of takes over. No idea how. Don't know. But it does. And then it's more about, I think, when you've got the first draft, it's then about rewriting it and rewriting it and rewriting it and rewriting it until you feel, okay, that's all right, I can send it off. And one of the other things I really wanted to do was, I didn't want to write a really long novel, because actually I think there's this kind of notion, isn't there? I don't know who made this up. There's a notion that, if you don't write like 70 or 80,000 words, it's not a novel. Well, the Booker Prize winner was about, I don't know, not even 30,000 words. It's rubbish. Don't listen to what people say about that. Write the book the length the book should be, and whatever length you want to write it to. There's no rule. There are no rules. There are no rules. Rules are made up by people who just want to say no.
Sound advice.
Yeah, don't listen. Just write your book in the way you want to write your book. Because if you had, you'd never have half of these books. I'm trying to think of the one Orlando. That's not a long book, is it? Virginia Woolf, that's not probably even 40,000 words or something. It doesn't actually matter. What matters is that somebody can pick up your book, enjoy it, and that's what it is. I mean, when I was thinking about this, about writing novels, I just thought, I just want somebody to be, going on holiday, and they go, oh, what would be good? I sit on the beach and just read something easy and a bit light, a bit of fun. That's what I think. I want people to pick my book up when they think like that. Not, I want something of high literature that's going to maybe make me think and challenge me and all that stuff, because it's not that. It's just a bit of fun.
I think it is fun. I think it's quite a clever book. For as much fun as it is to read, it is very readable and very enjoyable, but it is a very clever story.
Well, I hope it also does make some comments about people's attitude to people who are sort of over 60. This invisibility and this kind of, not just being ignored, really, I guess. Obviously I am over 60. I don't experience that being ignored forever. So I'm too bossy. But anyway, but in principle, I could be. And I think, Julia coming to terms with not having a job anymore, not having any purpose. And I think she finds her purpose in her writing, in her blog, or what's going to be her blog in the second book. And I think Frankie is lost. She's a lost soul. She moves around to all these places, always on the go, always never settled, because she's a lost soul, really. And I think she finds herself, she finds her life in Little Clarston, which she never thought she ever would. And I think, still to be resolved, her relationship with Julia. But there's a kind of, I think you feel there's a development of a warmth towards each other as they go through the book. They start off very annoyed with each other, and they gradually sort of come together. Did you feel that?
Definitely, yeah. By the end of the book, there's a very different relationship.
Yeah. And I think that changes again. Well, I don't know this because it's difficult to tell when you're writing. You're the writer, but I mean, obviously I've had some beta readers on my second book now, and they say, well, it is, the relationship has moved on, which is nice, because I can't always see that, because you just kind of do what comes naturally to you. I don't kind of think about it too much. Well, I mean, I do think about it a lot. That's ridiculous. But I mean, their relationship, I can just hear them talking, and I can just work with that. I'm not sort of thinking, oh, now they've got to do this, or now they've got to, you know, I'm putting them into situations, and it's almost like years ago when I was a theatre director. I was director of Commonwealth Theatre Company. It was quite a big company in London at that time, and we used to develop plays through the improvisation process. And it was literally like, you just, you know, you put two actors together and you just say, here's the location, here's the situation. So your location could be anything. It could be you're in a laundrette, and a person comes in who's shouting fire, go. And then you'd say someone, they're doing that, so they're playing that out. And then you say, change location. The location now, you're now on the moon. So you have to keep the same story, but they're in a different place. So it's all a way of sort of getting your mind to think about what's happening, what's the relationship between the characters, how are they reacting to that environment, how are they reacting differently to that environment. Because if any of us, you know, if we go into the same place, we're not going to be exactly the same. We walk into a crowded room, some of us are going to be fine, some of us are going to be nervous, some of us are going to dive for the bar because we're so anxious, some of us just want to get out of it. You know, so it's trying to think about, put yourself in their space and try and think, how would they behave, so that not everybody behaves the same.
I think, yeah, that's a really interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I mean, you know, I think sometimes you read a book. I mean, I'm reading a book at the moment, which I'm not really enjoying that much. It's by Lisa Jewell, but she's a fantastic writer. I love all her stuff. But this one, in fact, so boring, I can't even remember the name of it now. But she's a brilliant writer, and I've read a lot of her books, but this book is just not doing it for me, you know? And I can't remember the characters very well. I have to keep going back and thinking, oh, what happened? Because I don't care. If you don't care about the characters, you won't remember the story. You won't be in the story. You'll be outside of the story, which means that you're not really enjoying it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think you have to, the characters are what keep you in the story.
Yeah. It's like with the TV thing, isn't it? I mean, you know, we as people who make the program spend ages and ages getting the scripts absolutely right, getting the sets right, getting the costumes right, getting the makeup right, getting the casting right. You know, we fret over the tiniest things. And it's always, actually, if you're ever watching rushes, you can hear all this tutting in the room, but it's not that anything's wrong with it. It's just like the makeup person has seen something so tiny wrong with that makeup that you can't even see it, or the costume person just noticed that they should have, you know, this isn't quite pressed properly, and you don't really notice it. So I think it's a bit like that, really. You know, the attention to detail is really important. It's important for it to create the whole atmosphere. I mean, you know, actors, you know, you can do all the stuff you like, but if you've got Amelia Fox in it, people will watch it and they'll love her. She could do anything. She could probably read the telephone directory. Oh, that's very funny. Quick story, not funny story, but a quick story. I was in Cannes in the Majestic Hotel, which is like the posh hotel there. You can't really afford it. I mean, it's like, you know, 10 quid for a glass of water sort of thing. Anyway, I was in there. I thought, oh, I've got to go to the loo. So I went to the loo. And I was standing in the loo, and then this person comes and stands next to me. I thought, if only Judi Dench, my favourite person in the universe. And she was like, she was standing. I said, oh, please go in front of me. That's my claim to fame. Judi Dench in the toilets at the Majestic.
That sounds like another crime novel. We are.
There must be something in that, yes. But I mean, lovely people. I mean, John Hannah, who was also in one of the first block of Silent Witness, he's absolutely delightful, lovely man. And we had quite a lot to talk about because he was in the theatre as well, about the same time that I was. So we knew some people were the same, and we both worked at the Royal Court. So that was lovely. We had some very nice actors, actually. Very nice. Indeed. Sean Pertwee, who's lovely. He was in one of the later episodes. And Amelia and David are a delight. You know, Amelia is so good on scripts. She literally is brilliant. You know, we can go through all these have all these people who are advised, like forensic advisor and everything. You can go through the whole lot, right? All the forensic everything, and then you get to the set, and she'll say, "But this isn't quite right, is it?" You go, "Right, is it?" Oh, is it? And I tell you what, 100% of the time she's right. She's absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Knows all the lines, never makes a fuss about anything, just gets on and does it. Well, David's also very, very nice, but lovely team to work with, actually. Lovely team. That's one of my other things I'm going to be writing when I've got the other murder. Well, I've got 2 minutes to do it. I started to write a serious crime novel. It's a bit scary, but that would be interesting. But I've kind of got to put that aside so I can, you know, finish this second book and then finish the third book in the series. Because otherwise you get off the treadmill. I might get behind then. You have to wait a whole year then for another book.
I would read any kind of crime novel that you write at this point.
That's very kind of you. You must. I like you a lot, Caroline. Is all I can say.
This is good. But we are at the, and I could talk to you for hours, but we are at the end of our time.
Oh, how
So
lovely.
just quickly before we finish, remind people what they're going to go and buy.
Oh yes, so it's called More Than Murder by me, Jayne Chard, and you can buy it at your bookshop, local bookshop, which would be great to support your local bookshop. Please do that if you can, or you can buy it on Amazon, amazon.co.uk. Just hopefully if you type my name, it'll come up. If it doesn't, then tell Caroline and I'll send you one myself. But you have to pay for it. Thank you so much, Caroline. It's been absolutely lovely talking to you.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. You're more than welcome back anytime.
Lovely. Next year then, with the second book.
Definitely.